You're listening to the Holistic Spaces podcast brought to you by Mindful Design Feng Shui School. Episode 352 Remembering and Honoring Our Ancestors. Welcome to episode 352 of the Holistic Spaces podcast, where we hope to inspire, educate, and empower you to create your own holistic spaces that nurture and resonate with you. Laura Morris and Angie Cho are the founders of the Mindful Design Feng Shui School and authors of Mindful Living, a guide to the everyday magic of Feng Shui. We teach Feng Shui online at mindfuldesignschool.com. Sign up for our mailing list for special free content, workshops, and events available only to our newsletter subscribers. Welcome. We're having a lot of fun in October and in the fall. Be sure to sign up for our newsletter list. You can sign up by visiting mindfuldesignschool.com/join. We have a free autumn chi checklist, a downloadable PDF that's being emailed in the newsletter to our newsletter subscribers. We also have a replay of our autumn gathering with a ritual that we think all of you will really enjoy. And this is all straight into your inbox if you're on our newsletter list. We also have our annual Feng Shui reset coming up soon next month. And it's just the best way to keep up with us, to find out about our certification course, which is now open for enrollment. And this time of year, we have a lot of stuff going on. So we hope you'll stay connected with us through our mailing list. So for this episode, we're looking towards the end of the month, the end of October, beginning of November, and we're looking at remembering and honoring our ancestors. And so Laura's going to take the lead on this because this is much more closely knit to her own cultural heritage. But this is something that Laura and I really emphasize a lot with our students. Of course, we're teaching a Chinese modality, Feng Shui, but we also always support our students and encourage our students to embrace their own cultural heritage and see how that can be pulled together, either where your local location is, what's happening around you right now, where you live, where you are, being present in the moment, being present in what is available around you, as well as looking to that ancient practice. If you're connected to this Feng Shui practice, if that resonates with you, looking to the wisdom in that, but also not forgetting the wisdom of your own ancestors, whether that's your Feng Shui teachers, whether that's your family ancestors, your DNA ancestors, or the family that you've created around yourself, or the people that are indigenous to the land that you're on. So there's many different layers to look at it. And we invite our students to always recognize all that. So we're going to talk about this in today's episode. Laura's going to take the lead. Maybe next year I'll have more to say because I'm actually facilitating a Ikebana, a Japanese flower arranging retreat at a beautiful Shambhala center in central Mexico, where Dia de Muertos is a huge celebration. And actually the folks at Casa Huerma, they were telling me that Pascuaro, where the Casa Huerma is, the retreat center, is actually like the town that movie Coco is based on, from the movie about Dia de Muertos by Pixar. And so I'm really looking forward to it. And we're going to create a lot of beautiful flower arrangements and then come together and we'll learn about Dia de Muertos from the locals. We're going to visit the flower fields. The Dia de Muertos flower is marigold. What marigold is one of the flowers, the Day of the Dead flowers. And we're also going to create a mandala and an offering, an ofrenda for all of our loved ones to remember and honor our ancestors and our loved ones together at this retreat. So I'll have more information next year and next November 2027. But I'm really excited to learn about other cultures and what they're doing. So Laura, get us started.
Okay. All right. Angie kind of did a good setup there, but one of the reasons why we are doing this episode at this time of year is because the end of October and the early November, this time is often thought of as being what was referred to as a liminal time or a thin time. And what that means is that it is a time where communication between realms, or let's say, communication between two realms is easier. The walls between,
The living and the
however,
dead.
however you want to think about it, the living and the dead is thinner. So it provides ease of communication. There are times of the year that facilitate this. And so this time of the year is often thought to be that way. When you think about it from a feng shui perspective, when you transition in from that metal season into that water season, which is what happens at this time of year, it also makes sense because water chi is very much, it's connected with ancestry, but it's also very much about intuition and mystery and really diving down below the surface, right? It's not kind of it's hidden, things that are hidden. So it all really makes sense. So we thought this would be an opportunity for us to talk about this subject. It's something that's really close to my heart, honoring ancestors. I've done quite a bit of work in it. And not only that, but finding connection with saints as well. And they kind of go hand in hand depending on your heritage and your background. But there are different types of ancestors and ancestry. We don't all have to be doing DNA testing and whatever it is now that's popular, whichever one is still around, to find out who, you have in your line of family, generational line. It can be more than blood. It can be lineage and teachers. It can be spirit guides, like I mentioned. You can do really interesting meditative work where you do visualization to go back and to not only discover maybe ancestors that aren't even on your chain, but they show up for you, or even finding saints that you connect with as well. And the saint part is, for me, connected because both this time of year has both sides of that, right? So honoring ancestors, Angie, do you want to give a little bit also background about why ancestry is important in feng shui?
Yes, honoring ancestors and those who have come before you and lineage is really important in feng shui because, well, first of all, a lot of the things that I practice, whether it's feng shui or flower arranging ikebana, tea ceremony, a lot of these Asian practices are Taoist practices. And we're looking at things in the Tao or the way. So it's not a standalone practice or art. It's actually something that has a continuity that continues. There's a long lineage and there's that power in the all the people that came before you. So that is quite important. And Laura and I recognize our teachers. We talk about our teachers. We list our teachers. We name our teachers. We don't claim any of these teachings as our own, but in fact, that they're thousands of years old and this has been passed down to us. And we want to continue to share it. So it's something that is living and is a thread that continues to grow rather than just a point in time. And I've also been kind of playing with this. Lori, maybe we should talk about this more later. But also, I think there's something important about lineage. Like, for instance, in my Buddhist practices, oftentimes there is a altar, which we'll talk about, or a shrine with images of your teachers and your teachers' teachers or your lineage. And even in the Buddhist practice I do, there's actually a refuge tree where there's the tree has so many tiers of those teachers that came before you or practitioners that came before you that are all the time supporting you. And so there's something about having that behind you and in back of you. And a lot of feng shui, like the commanding position, is focused on this human need to see what's in front of us. And we can satisfy that, we put ourselves in command to feel in control. But then there's also the other aspect, the yin aspect of feng shui, where we are invited to see behind us, to have eyes behind us, to always be connected to not just what's moving forward, but what's in back of us. We so often forget how to take care of our backs, to know how to feel what's behind us, whether it literally means who's standing behind you, or do you have a solid headboard behind you, or do you what are all the people in your life, the ancestors, all the people that have supported and helped you and brought you to where you are now, how are those all always standing behind you and giving you insight, intuition, support? So that's why it's so important. Laura and I could talk about this forever. And then also this aspect of the living and the dead. Officially, feng shui was first started as a way of exploring how to create or how to site your ancestors' grave. And so it was yin feng shui, because yang feng shui would be looking at where the living are. So homes for the living or spaces for the living. But it was originally started to house or to site spaces for the dead, for your ancestors, to honor your ancestors, because forgetting your ancestors is a missed opportunity and you forget your ancestors. So feng shui was started by creating principles to find the best, most ideal, most auspicious burial sites for your family members, your ancestors, to ensure that your ancestors were happy, were at peace, that they could support you, that they could have your back, that would lead to more auspiciousness, more prosperity for the descendants, and that there's always this connection, that they're always like there to support you and to see behind you and to give you that sight that humans don't really have anymore, to be able to see behind your head, to see in 360 degrees, right?
Yeah.
The school of feng shui that Laura and I practice, it's called BTB, or Black Sect. We honor the lineage of our teachers who share their wisdom and knowledge with us, because we've received so much from them and from all the wisdom traditions that inform feng shui. And it's important for Laura and I, especially. One thing I've noticed is that people are ashamed or hide who their teachers were, but we would like to model that it's more powerful to have that lineage behind you and to share it, to name it, than to ignore it or to hide it from others.
Yeah, I think this is the idea behind remembering. Remembering is the running theme throughout, I think, all of these celebrations, all of these days, these rituals, because to honor and to remember strengthens obviously your those who have you've lost and come before you. It provides them with strength wherever they are, whatever's going on, but it also in turn makes you stronger because now you have a happy, strengthened lineage or family or generational, however you want to look at it. Some families are difficult for some people, and I recognize that, and we honor that. And so you don't again, this is why there's lots of options in terms of how you can honor ancestry. So ancestry or exploration, as I've mentioned, it can be done anytime. Obviously, this can be done anytime. This isn't time sensitive, but there are certain times of the year that are perhaps more potent. So right around when this podcast is coming out is we've finished Samhain, which is the Celtic or the Hallows Eve time, all that, which is a celebration in its own right for the Celtic calendar. But moving into November 1st and November 2nd is a kind of a 1-2 day punch. The November the 1st is called All Saints Day in English. In Italy, how I know it, it's a religious holiday called Ogni Santi, and Ogni Santi literally translates as every saint. Ogni is every, Santi is saints, and it honors the holy dead, like saints, popes, all this kind of stuff, the ones that are connected with generally the Catholic Church, although I understand that other Christians also practice this. So it is mainly a Christian religious holiday. And then following on the next day is on November 2nd is what is referred to as All Souls Day, or Giorno dei Morti, which is the Day of the Dead in Italian. And as Angie was mentioning, there's also a tradition in Mexico and I believe in other Latin cultures and Hispanic cultures of Dia de los Muertos, which is, again, this is the Day of the Dead. It's in Italian, one's in Spanish. And that is to honor anyone else that doesn't fall into the holy category. So usually family or anyone that has passed, anyone that has been lost. And I mean, if you really think about it from a deeply Catholic perspective, which is my heritage, my background, it is especially for those that may be in purgatory. And purgatory is basically sort of a waiting room in order to, if you were thinking of it as a Buddhist, gaining merit, in order to continue on to heaven. So by praying and honoring and not forgetting, so by remembering, you will help your ancestors because it is important they are not forgotten and that there is someone in the other realm that is continuing to say their name, to pray to them, to have feasts for them, to do these things, okay, for them. And so you honor them with flowers, with candles. The flowers that the Italians like are chrysanthemums. I think it's probably because of the time of the year. And candles, lighting candles, going to church to light a candle or having a candle. What I do is I light a candle. I have one of those those tall candles that last, that can be burned for hours and hours and hours. And I'll light it for those 2 days. I also would have a toast and a drink to my ancestors and honor them with food. Both days have feast days, although from what I have seen and what I've experienced, the big feast is on the All Souls Day, or the Giorno dei Morti. And there's different foods prepared in different regions. I'm not speaking for all cultures and all regions. My favorite that I have that comes out at this time of year, and it's not just for those days, it's like weeks on either side. And it's called the Pane dei Santi, which is basically all saints bread, or saint, or holy bread, or saint bread. And it is typical of the region of Tuscany that I live in. And it's essentially this, it's kind of like panettone, but it's a little bit different, and it's delicious. And also what comes at this time is chocolate, like literally liquid chocolate, hot chocolate, and you like dunk it. It's so delicious. So this is, there's different foods at this time of year. Different cultures use different foods, but generally I keep it pretty simple. I light a candle, I say a prayer, I say the names out loud, and then I toast with wine or with vinsanto. Vinsanto is a particular wine that we have in our region. So that's what I do. And flowers are a big thing too. Chrysanthemums. Angie, you were mentioning that I think for the Dia de los Muertos, it's marigolds, correct?
Marigolds are one of the flowers for Day of the Dead. And yeah, I'm really excited. We're going to have a visit to the marigold fields, and they create a path of marigold or flowers for the dead to find the ofrenda, the altar or the offering that you've created for your ancestors. So you create like a trail of flowers.
Mm,
So that'll be really
that's
nice. And
beautiful.
then we're also going to go to the Mercado,
Hmm.
the market, and people can get, similar to what you were talking about, different foods, but different breads that you can get your ancestor's name written on it. And then you can also offer that to your ancestor offering.
Hmm. Yeah, cool.
Yeah. So it'll be fun, and we'll know more about it next
Yeah,
year
yeah. We'll do it.
once
We'll do
I
a follow up. We'll do a follow up one.
yeah, we'll do it next year.
So we wanted to give you a couple of ways that you could actually start to connect and honor ancestors on your own. I mean, I've obviously talked about things that I do, and you're welcome to try those, obviously. Some of the ones that are pretty obvious, but they bear mentioning, is to take up practices with a long history, especially if it's something that is connected to your cultural. It doesn't have to be, but it can be connected to your cultural background. If that's kind of adds a different layer to it. But I find even just taking up a practice with a long heritage or lineage is in itself creating your own ancestry. Especially for those of us that don't really want to connect, for people that don't really want to connect with their own familial generations, you can kind of connect this way. So, for instance, Feng Shui, we've talked about that, how it's based on legacy, not legacy, lineage. Tarot, herbalism, other traditions that have, again, these long practices where you can find a teacher, and then you can connect with the history of it. And especially some people are just really wired like that. I know I am. I really love that practices. Feng Shui is what brought me to other practices like tarot. Feng Shui is obviously far older than tarot, but it's still, they both have their own length and traditions. And so diving deeply into these subjects can help you understand that you're not alone, that much of our knowledge comes from people that came before us. So it's a really nice way to create this connection to something deeper. I mentioned one of the obvious ways is to research the people that came before you. So nowadays you can access so much information on blood ancestry. You can look up your family tree. You can learn about people that descended from. You can get curious about it. What languages did they speak? For me, I have now been learning Italian now for almost 4 years. So I'm speaking the language of my ancestors. And for me, that's been a really great way to connect. Obviously, going back to Italy quite often. So again, these are really great ways for me to explore. And in doing so, I did some really fundamental, deep research on my own ancestry as well. And when I went to Italy, it was a lot easier to do that. So becoming curious about your ancestry, but knowing too that you can even look at the lineage of your teachers, the guides that you learned from, elders and predecessors in your community. So it can mean so many different things. And then the last thing is to create an altar. Do you want to talk a bit about that, Angie? You want to talk about altars and shrines?
Sure. So you can create an altar or a shrine space dedicated to your ancestors or spirit guides. You may want to carve out a space in your home that's dedicated to the presence of your ancestors or spirit guides or someone in your lineage. I'm Buddhist, and like I mentioned, like on my shrine, I have a tonka of a refuge tree that is a representation of like my teachers and my teachers and all the people back to the first teacher in my lineage. So there's like hundreds of people on that in that tree. Also, it could just simply be a picture of your teacher, or I love how Laura said, you could, if this calls out to you, you can seek out a practice that has a long lineage and, see who's a teacher or who's a teacher right now. And, with an altar, you put the picture up, but you could also take it down. You could switch about, right? So there's nothing is like put in stone, right? And so it can be as simple as and as elaborate as you like. You can just you could also not have a picture of anyone. It could just be a fresh flower or something that was passed on to you from your family lineage. We know you guys are creative. Because we get all the questions of what can possibly happen. So,
Hmm.
so you can answer your own question with that. Trust your heart and see what makes sense for you and what's possible for you. And creating a space in your home in this way to honor those that came before you really acknowledges that foundation that they created for you. And once you've set up this area to connect to your ancestors, be sure to take care of it, like dust it, keep it
Hmm.
clean. And another question that always comes with all these other things that we're offering is where? So big question is where? Where can you place your ancestor altar with the wisdom of Feng Shui? So to find a Feng Shui inspired location for your ancestor altar, the first thing I would say is find the place that works for you. But if there's a lot of places that work, then you can have more guidance. Laura, what is some general guidance on finding the location for your ancestor altar?
My preference, my personal favorite. Well, I have mine in my office because, and I was going to mention this before, and their ancestor altars are different than there's many different kinds of altars, right? So we're talking about one specifically for ancestors because I have other ones for more the Dharma, more when I'm meditating and da 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 da. So I'm actually turning my head right now and looking at mine, but mine is behind my shoulder. It is up on my bookcase. I've cleared a shelf for it, and it is visible. So they've got my back. They're behind me, and I have my family photos. I have like jewelry. I have recipes that my grandmother wrote. I have a whole bunch. I have flowers. I keep their fragrance and stuff. So yeah, that's where mine is.
So, where to place your ancestor altar using Feng Shui principles? Ideally, you want to set up your altar for your ancestors in a neutral part of your home. Well, actually, the first step is again, the place that works the best for you. But if you have many options, find a neutral place in your home. So, not a bedroom and not a bathroom. There's no one right place for your ancestor altar. So, trust your intuition when it comes to the best place for you.
So if you're having trouble, I think a good spot or a good place to start, a good thing to use is the bagua. So you can use the bagua to find the appropriate location because we're talking about using feng shui to sort this out. The career and path in your life area. So the water area, it's called Kan. It's called wisdom in our book, is connected to ancestry. So this could be a great place for your altar. It's also generally at the front center of your home. it would be visible and you could create the altar there. Also, it can be quite subtle. It could be a photograph with a vase of flowers. It can be pretty simple. It doesn't have to be obvious to everyone walking into your home, but you know that that's what it is and you've taken the time to place it there.
Another area that you can look to is called the family area, the Bagua, and it's usually colored green. So if you have our Bagua map or a book, you can look that up. And it's another one you might want to consider for your ancestor altar because it's related to family. It's also about growth and new beginnings, which might seem unrelated to ancestors, but our ancestors are the ones who created the foundation for us to move forward in our lives. Lori, do you have any last thoughts about this topic?
No, I don't think so. We talked a lot, we shared a lot. I don't think so. I mean, I think it'll be interesting when you get back from Mexico and then we'll do a follow-up. We'll do one next year and you can share all of your knowledge that you got when you were there.
Okay. Well, thank you, Laura, for putting the bulk of this episode together. And thank you all for listening to this episode of the Holistic Spaces podcast. You can tune in every Monday for a new episode. If you like our podcast, please share it with others. Be sure to sign up for our newsletter list to get our free fall checklist and to watch the replay on rituals to embrace the energy of the fall using Feng Shui. And we have so much stuff coming up. So be sure you're on our mailing list. Visit mindfuldesignschool.com/join or look in the show notes. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next week.